Alrighty, class. Hopefully by now you would have reviewed week three's part one and part two videos. I'm going to segue right into week three's part three, which is going to consist of calculating for our brick, which is the very skinny section of the drawing. See here, it says calls out 4 inches of brick, and it goes around the entire outside perimeter of our foundation wall. However, as I stated in the beginning, section CC right here is at a higher height than the rest of the house, which is at 2.8. Okay, so what that means is if we remember these two break lines that we had to insert, that means from this line to this corner and from this point to this line, can you see that? That is at the 3 foot 4 inches as indicated on our section cut. The rest of our foundation wall around our structure from here until this point is at the 2'8". Okay, so we need to color coordinate our foundation plan, and in order to do that, I've always found it helpful that you have two separate colors, particularly in the same color scheme. So since my F2 is green, I will have two different variations of green for my F2, and then for my F4, this is blue. So I will have two different variations of blue to represent the different heights of my different sections of my porch and my foundation wall. Again, you don't have to use the exact same colors as mine, but you do need to separate your plans the exact same way as mine and label it the exact same way as mine. That way, when we are calculating our lengths and our formulas, it will all match up and make sense. Okay, so I'm going to pause this video and I'm going to color all of my 2'8" brick structures, and then I will be back in a moment. All right, y'all, so as you can see, I am back. I'm going to zoom in a little bit to show the detail. So remember, we said that our horizontals were going to run the full length. So because of that, my green is stretching all the way to this corner. However, our verticals are the short side. So you notice how my green and my purple do not overlap. There is a break there, okay? Same thing goes for my brown up here. My purple does not run into my brown. My brown stretches the entire length from point A to point B. And then for my vertical guy over here, it only goes from here until our marker where we split out, okay? And same thing with this guy. So these are still going to be a corresponding green and a corresponding blue. They are just a different shade so that we know this is at a different height. I'm going to pause this again, and then I will be back once I have completed my diagram. All right, now you can see I have completed my diagram. I'll zoom out a little bit. You can see my brick line from here to here, then my brick line from here to here, and then my brick line from there to there, and then my brick line from there to there. Starting with this corner, notice how none of my separations overlap. Now, I know what most of you are probably asking is, well, why is this section here purple if it's in green territory? And why is this section over here brown if it's in purple if it's in brown territory? The reason being is because we are looking at these as separate entities, okay? So we are looking at the brick line in its entirety, and we know that we said that our horizontals are going to run the full length. Therefore, the horizontal bricks need to go all the way to the end on both sides, and then our vertical bricks need to just go where the horizontal bricks aren't, okay? Just the fill-in space so that they are not overlapping on either side of our set of plans, okay? So the reason why we aren't coloring these guys yet on F5 and F6 is because obviously this little note here says that it is 12 inches of CMU here, but also our BB section also states that it is 12-inch CMU and there is no brick on either side. So we will discuss that in a later video when we start to calculate our CMU differences. But right now, we are essentially going to repeat the exact same thing that we did with our footings. We are either going to add or subtract to get our desired dimensions. Okay, so for instance, for F1, we'll use F2 as an example because the dimension line is down here from outside of brick to outside of brick. That dimension is 40 feet long. So because it is the horizontal length, we don't need to add or subtract anything. So and this is how we're going to label B1 for brick, it's going to be corresponding with our F1 is going to be 40.00 feet, okay, with no kind of calculations. However, for our F3 in this case, because F2 and F4 are completely different animals. So right now we're just talking about F1, which would be our B1, and F3, which would be our B3. That is going to go, you have the dimension of 28 feet, which is from outside of brick to outside of brick. However, we need to subtract the 4 inches of brick from this side, as well as the 4 inches of brick on that side to get the length of our inside wall. Now we're talking about F3 here, okay? Because remember, F4 is split. So this one is at 3'4" and this one is at 2'8". So don't apply that logic to F4 or to F2. We will discuss those in a little bit later video, but I'm going to show you what the calculation for B1, in this case since we're dealing with brick, and B3 will be. Okay, so this is my calculation. Remember, I was just doing my F1 and my F3 calculation. I have 40 feet, and I noted that the dimension line is already from brick to brick, which I mean outside of brick to outside of brick. I just wanted to leave it on one line. And then my B3, I have 28 feet minus 0.33, which is the 4 inches on one side, and then 0.33, which is the 4 inches on the other side, and I get a total length of 27.34. Okay, now in order to calculate the remaining, you're going to do literally the exact same thing. Just at the end of your calculation, you're going to put at and whatever the height of your foundation wall is for that section. So for instance, if I'm doing F2, my dimension line is 16 feet, but it is from outside of brick to inside of CMU. I need to get to the outside of the CMU. Therefore, I'm going to subtract 1 foot from my 16 feet in order to get my linear footage from this point to this point. So if I take 16 feet and subtract 1 foot, it is going to be 15 linear feet for my dark green section of my F2 foundation wall. All right, and the same thing is going to apply because I shifted my dimension line and I subtracted it 15 on and subtracted 1 foot and got 15 on this side. Obviously, that is going to increase this dimension and make it from 24 feet to now 25 feet. And obviously, the way that you can check that is if you take your calculations of 15 plus 25, you get the overall 40 linear feet, which will complete this wall, okay? Same is gonna go for your F4. Your dimension right now is 8 feet from outside of brick to inside of CMU. So therefore you need to move it 1 foot this way, which will then make this line 9 feet. However, you then need to subtract out 4 inches from this side, because remember, we're not having any overlap. So you want to add 1 foot, but then you want to subtract out 4 inches. And then on this side, it's going to subtract 1 foot. So now you're going to be working with 19 feet on this side. However, you still need to subtract out the 4 inches from the end on this side because you don't want any overlap. And that is going to give you your 2 dimensions on this side. So I'm going to do the math on that one, and then I will reconvene. Okay, so I accidentally started a new video, but that's okay. This is my calculations for my B2A, which we do need to label. This is going to be A side, B2B, this is going to be B side, and then B4A, this is going to be A side, and then B4B, this is going to be the B side. And I've color coordinated them to kind of correspond with my set of plans. That way I'm not confusing myself. So the dimension is, as we talked about, 16 feet minus 1 foot. That came out to 15 at 2.67 feet high. The next one was 24 feet. You had to add back in that foot. That was 25 feet at 3.33 feet high. Then you came over to B4 side, and you had 20 feet minus 4 inches from the top minus 1 foot from the bottom. And what I mean is, you know, 4 inches from the top and then 1 foot from the bottom, okay, to move this dimension line here to our red line. And that gave you 18.67 feet at 2 feet 6'7" height. And then for your B side, which is this guy right here, you have 8 feet. You subtracted 4 feet from one side, but then added 1 foot to the other side, and you got 8 feet, 8.67 feet at 3.33 height. So you subtracted 1 foot from here, but then you added the 1 foot over here, okay, to get your dimension lines for this. And that is how you calculate for your brick lengths. Not difficult, not hard. The next step that we will be focusing on is calculating our CMU lengths.